Okay, we're recording.
Great, good morning. We're officially calling to order the meeting of the Municipal Accountability Review Board for Thursday, October 8th. Welcome to everyone today, and hope that everyone is healthy and doing well. I am joined by my co-chair, Ms. Christine Shaw. Do you have any opening remarks?
Madam Secretary.
All right, very good. So we'll move right into our public comment period. Members of the public that are attending via telephone, you do have an opportunity to make public remarks. Before doing so, if you wish to speak, please state your name, your town of affiliation, wait to be recognized, and then you can limit your comments to 2 minutes. So if we have any members of the public who wish to comment, please identify yourself at this time. Okay, hearing none, we will go right. Oh, do we have someone who cares to speak?
Yeah, it's Mark.
Hi, Mark. Are you going to give a public comment, Mark Waxenberg?
No, go right ahead.
All right. Welcome, Mark. I'm sure you'll have opportunities for plenty of comments later on in the agenda. All right, we're going to move right to the approval of the minutes for September 10th, 2020. Is there a motion?
David Biller, so moved.
Very good.
David Biller, second then.
Thank you. Motion for approval of the minutes has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Julian, over for a roll call vote.
Mr. White.
Yes.
Mr. Waxenberg.
Yes.
Mr. Biller.
Connecticut
Yes.
137.
Mr. Luciano.
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mr. Brockman.
Yeah.
Ms. Shaw.
Yes.
And Secretary McCaw.
Yes.
Are there any board members who joined that I didn't mention? Right, that's everybody.
Okay, very good. All right, so we're going to start with the City of West Haven today. The first item on the agenda for the City of West Haven is a subcommittee update. Last subcommittee meeting was on September 22nd, 2020. We do have a memo from Julian to the MARB summarizing the key components of that meeting. I'm going to ask Julian and Kim to give us a brief overview of the subcommittee meeting for West Haven. Thank you.
As the Secretary mentioned, we last met on the 22nd of September. In addition to the routine items that we've had on the agendas for updating the committee on the corrective action plan and the human resources action plan, we had one labor contract on the agenda, which is also on this meeting's agenda, a review of the AFSCME Local 681 contract, which is made up primarily of public works employees and non-managerial employees. There's obviously much more information and discussion on that coming up in the agenda. So for now, I'll just mention that the subcommittee did vote to recommend to the full MARB approval of that contract. There was also considerable discussion about the fire districts and some work that's been done there. Questions during the budget process were raised regarding how the cumulative expenditures for fire service in West Haven stacked up against comparable sized communities. Staff here at OPM did some benchmarking with a couple other towns and did determine that there's a high per capita cost for fire service in West Haven. Took a deeper look and really confirmed that the driver of costs for the fire districts in West Haven is primarily derived from the employee and retiree benefits, especially the legacy costs with the defined benefit plans and retiree health costs. That did talk about how the districts have taken steps to begin to address those by closing the defined benefit pension plans, increasing their mill rates, and in the current year, budgeting for additional contributions to both pension and OPEB costs. We also discussed the status of some updated actuarial evaluations that we've been expecting. At this point, we're expecting to get those updated valuations at the end of this month, which means that they would likely be up for discussion and presentation at the November subcommittee meeting. The mayor advised the committee on plans to fill the currently vacant fire chief position, or it may not be vacant anymore if that has been, if that position was filled since the subcommittee meeting. But in any event, that position's been vacant for, I believe, a couple years. The assistant chief, who also fills the role of fire marshal for the Allentown district, has been doing double, triple duty, and which is not a sustainable practice over the long term. That discussion was really just to advise the subcommittee of the intent to fill that position. There was some discussion about span of control, and the subcommittee did support that as a a local decision. The plan, when asked about how that fits into other initiatives that might involve consolidation of certain aspects of the districts, the city did point out that the intent was to enter into a short-term contract for that position, which would presumably allow for some shifting around structurally down the road. That led into a discussion about the tri-district MOU that is in the process of being prepared. That MOU would create a structure to allow for the consolidation of certain back office functions, either in the finance office type functions, investment advisory services, audit services, and things of that nature. So that's an important step in moving towards some of those shared or consolidation or merging of services. Once that memorandum of understanding is executed, then the next step would be for the districts to put together a business plan on how to implement those, any measures that they move forward on from there. And that was the essence of our subcommittee meeting in September.
Thank you, Julian. Any questions or discussion on the update on the West Haven subcommittee? Okay, we'll move on to the labor contract, Acme Local 681, that is being presented to the MARB today for approval or rejection. The MARB does have until October 15th to approve or reject the agreement if we choose to take action. So before us today, the town.
Good morning. Sorry.
Good morning. Who is that?
Good morning.
Good morning. So
Sorry.
before today, we have a tentative agreement between the City of West Haven and Acme Local 681 for a contract, their contract that expired June 30th, 2017. You have a summary of this tentative agreement in your package, along with the updated agreements and a cost savings estimate. A couple of highlights of the agreement that is before us today for consideration. The contract covers approximately 98 employees, a combination of public works and non-managerial town hall workers. As I indicated, the contract expired June 30th, 2017. The agreement was ratified by the union on September 1st and approved by the City Council on September 14th. This is a 6-year collective bargaining agreement, in which the first 4 years includes 0% wage increases. In the last 2 years, in fiscal year 22 and 23, a 1% wage increase and a 2% wage increase in fiscal year 2023. The bargaining unit, this particular bargaining unit has already moved over to the state partnership plan that happened in January of this year. The agreement, however, codifies the change to the state partnership, so the language has been updated. The transition of this particular group to the partnership was projected to save the city about $220,000, and those savings were reflected in the and multi-year plan. The agreement includes. Okay. The agreement also includes increases to the employee contributions to the health insurance premium, going from 12% to 15% effective 7/1/21. So that's fiscal year 22, and then going from 13 to 14% the year thereafter, so effective July 1/22, which is fiscal year 23. The city has provided in their package the analysis of the additional cost of the wage increase and the savings from the health insurance premium cost share. They provide that just from the perspective of the fiscal impact of the plan, and then they also compare it to the 5-year plan as well. And so you have that in the package. The agreement also eliminates retiree health benefits for new hires. It eliminates sick leave payout at retirement for new hires, and also makes changes with overtime, excluding sick time from the calculation of the hours worked for overtime purposes. No changes on vacation time with respect to overtime calculations, but they did have some changes pertaining to the exclusion of sick time. So with that, that
motion to
summarizes-
approve, Luciano.
Very good. All right. Well, before you get that motion to approve, sir, are there any other questions that you want to ask the town?
Yeah, this is Tom Hamilton. I have a couple of comments and questions. I don't know if you want to put a motion on the table first, but
Yeah,
All right.
that's
So
appropriate.
we have a motion, and is there a second?
I'll second that.
Very good. Discussion, and over to you, Tom.
Sure. I think, I was in on the West Haven Subcommittee meeting, and we did go over the contract, and, I'm quite satisfied. I think the deal that was reached here in terms of wages was very modest and favorable to the town. And I think the town did well on that regard. I'm happy to see that the town did continue to get some increases in the employee premium cost share. So I think that's a definite plus. I think scaling back the retiree health benefits is also a very important portion of this agreement. So, I'm going to support this agreement absolutely. But I do have a question, and I was just, I probably should have asked it at the subcommittee, but I just didn't cross my mind at the time. But can someone from the town confirm it? It looks like this group never went to a high deductible plan. And the reason I ask about it is because I know there's language in here that now, kind of codifies the move to the state partnership plan, which is saving the city money, and we're supportive of that, absolutely. But I know we had also previously had some other contracts and some discussion concerning kind of protecting the flexibility of the city in the event that the partnership plan in the future, if rates increase substantially, You know, normally, at least going back a few years, people would suggest that a high deductible plan would be, you know, less costly than a PPO type plan that the state plan is. But in fact, a number of communities, including the community I'm in and the district I'm in, as well as I know West Haven, found that actually the state plan was less costly for them than the estimates of a high deductible plan. But nevertheless, there was definitely discussion, and I know we had some other contracts that provided that if there was language in the contract that already allowed the city to put in a high deductible plan, that we wanted to preserve that right in the event that the state plan became more costly at some future point to the town. So I don't know who from the town can address that, but I just want to get some clarity on whether or not there's any language like that, or I think perhaps with this agreement, there never was any language that allowed for a move to a high deductible plan, but perhaps we could get some clarification on that.
Yeah, this is Bill Ryan. I'm Labor Counsel for the city, and Tom, I can answer that. So there was no agreement. The city had that on the table as far as migrating to a high deductible health plan. That was one of the reasons why the agreement initially was turned down by the bargaining unit. At the time of the second vote, the city had moved to the Connecticut partnership plan. So to specifically answer your question, the high deductible health plan and any reference to that plan was not included in the tentative agreement. However, I can point out in Article 7, Section 7.4, it does talk about the city being able to change insurance carriers if the benefits are substantially equal to the current coverage. So there's a way to go to another plan. Having a reference at this point in time to the high deductible health plan, personally to me, wouldn't necessarily help the city, because what I've seen is that the high deductible health plan, now that a lot of communities have agreed to go into it over the last 5 to 10 years, that plan is pricing out closer and closer to the PPO plan. It's kind of what happened when Blue Care came on the scene. That first it was bottomed out compared to the Century Preferred plan, and then over time it actually became more expensive. So I think that's the trend that we're seeing in the market. And so again, to answer your question, there's no reference to the high deductible health plan because there was an agreement to go to the Connecticut partnership plan, which someone pointed out earlier is saving the city approximately $220,000.
Right. Okay. I mean, I guess my concern would have been if you had already in a previous contract negotiated language that allowed you to implement high deductible health plan, and then had a contract that in essence took that away. But since you never had that in the contract to begin with, and typically in order to get that, you presumably would have had to give something somewhere else. I'm fine with where you landed on this, although it does suggest that for the next 6 years, you are going to be in a PPO health plan for this group of employees.
Well, not 6 years. This will expire June 30th of 2023.
Oh, good point. Right. We got multiple retro years here. Yep. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. I'm certainly satisfied and will be supporting this contract.
Any other discussion?
Secretary, I do. It's Kim.
Okay, Christine, go ahead.
No, it's Kim.
Oh, Kim, sorry.
My only question is around It's on page 21, and it has to do with the calculation. Actually, it's not page 21. I apologize. It's page 13. It has to do with the calculation of overtime, and I'm appreciative of the fact of the sick days being removed from the 40-hour work week of calculation. But and maybe this is a question for the city. Why is it that, was there discussion or in the future about removing holidays and vacation and personal time from a work week when you're calculating overtime? Because I see those as benefits, and to receive overtime on a benefit, to me, I come from corporate, which would have then stated that your work week is actually the hours you actually work.
So this is Bill Ryan again. I can address that question as well. So in the public sector for decades, the paid time off, all paid time off, has been included in the calculation of the 40 hours for the purpose of determining overtime after the 40 hours. Our initial proposal was to remove all paid time off towards that calculation. Obviously, that would be the ideal situation. The reality is it's been in the contract for decades. We were able to remove that piece of it, which I think is very important. So someone can't call in sick and then know that they're going to call in sick and then get overtime by having the 8 hours of sick time count towards the 40 hours worked. Ideally, I agree with you, but we do a lot of private sector work here. In corporate America, it's 40 hours actually worked. However, this is certainly a move in the right direction, and coupled with the fact that there's a wage freeze for 4 years, I think that the city was fortunate to be able to get this language in the contract. Could it be better? Yes, but it's been in the contract for decades. So we're certainly moving in the right direction, and that's where we are with this at this point in time.
Okay, I appreciate your comments and the fact that you at least attempted to get it all removed.
Yes, we did.
Thanks, Kim, and thanks, Ryan. Just for the formal record, I just want to note that the net savings of this contract exceeds what was in the 5-year plan. So I think the city did a great job, and you certainly will be right back at the negotiating table before you know it, and hopefully we'll continue to make progress in some of the other areas. But overall, you took a comprehensive approach, certainly reflects the municipality that's trying to achieve fiscal sustainability, consistent with actions we've seen from other municipalities, and I think you did a good job at the bargaining table. So with that, if there's no further discussion, then we'll turn it over to Julian. If anyone else wants to comment, please jump in now. All right, great. Hearing none, Julian, over to you.
Mr. White.
Yes.
Mr. Waxenberg.
Yes.
Mr. Biller.
Yes.
Mr. Luciano.
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mr. Felsigno.
Yes.
Mr. Brockman.
Yes.
Ms. Shaw.
Yes.
And Secretary McCaw.
Yes. Okay.
That's everybody.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so great work to the city, and the TA, as ratified and approved by the council, is also approved by the MARBs. Next item on the agenda for the city of West Haven is an update on the monthly financial report for August of 2020. The report has been provided in your materials, and I'll turn it over to the mayor or her team to provide us with a walkthrough and an update. Thank you.
Good morning, this is Frank. So you have the reports in front of you. As you recall, in July, we did report a shortfall on the tax collections due to timing, as well as, reporting around the advanced collections. At that time, I did indicate that we did expect to be back on track, and you'll see in the August report in front of you that has occurred. We are currently at 50.12% of property taxes collected when compared to the annual budget, compared to where we were last year at 50%. So recovery on that front as expected. We'll wait to see what will happen during the second half of the year when the second half taxes come in. But as of right now, the revenue situation is favorable for the city. We are seeing increases in licenses and permits as the building department starts to push through some of the backlog of the building permits as a result of the COVID pandemic. So we are seeing some positive movement on that. From the expense side, it's really too early at 2 months to really raise a white flag or raise any concerns. I'm not seeing anything that is drastically out of sync. We are seeing some timing issues around some items, one specifically around the healthcare. We had an additional premium month processed in the first quarter that should have been pushed through later. But we are seeing favorability on the debt service, and we're seeing control around most of the overtime from the city side. So I'm not overly concerned at this point anyway with the expenses from the general fund, and comparable results in both Allentown and the sewer fund. So recovery on the taxes there, containment on the expenditures. As noted in last month, the revenues that did come in obtained by Representative DeMassa, the additional $650,000 contribution has been made to the Allentown pension plan. That's over and above the ADEC. So as soon as that money came in, we wanted to make sure that got contributed. So at this point, we are on track, and if anything comes up, I will certainly make sure that the MARB is notified.
Thank you, Frank. Any discussion or questions on the monthly financial report for West Haven?
Yeah, this is Tom Hamilton. I have a question. The impact of the pandemic, I'm wondering, I know in some communities in Connecticut have seen an uptick in real estate activity, presumably as people move out of New York and so forth. I'm wondering whether West Haven saw any of that or not. Do you have any insight into how, what's the real estate market is like in West Haven over the last 6 months?
Hi, Nancy Rossi. The only thing that we have a lot of realtors here, I'm sure as most towns and cities, and houses are selling, and they're selling well above asking price. So as far as commercial, I don't have anything on that, but as far as residential, a house goes up and it sells like quickly, very, very quickly. And as I said, the realtors that I know are saying it's like people are outbidding by like $10,000, $15,000 per house, if not more, depending on the house. So I have to believe if that continues, it will definitely, help our bottom line.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion on the financial report?
This is Mark.
Hey, Mark.
How often do you meet with the finance person on the board side to go over their budget, or are you just accepting or taking their monthlies and incorporating it into your monthly? I think some legislation passed if I'm not mistaken, that requires or allows, probably requires the Board of Education to meet with the town authorities to go over their budget, so there are quote unquote no surprises. So have you or do you spend some time meeting with the board? Because I know it's just an authorization of dollars to the board and they do their thing, and there are some statutory references to some sort of independence there, but now they're trying to rein in some oversight. So I was just wondering, what is the process between the city and the board relative to monitoring the budget?
That's a great question. On a monthly basis, I do the extract out of the financial system to populate the Board of Education detail page in your report. After month 3, once we get the first quarter under our belt, typically every month I will communicate to my counterpart on the Board of Education as to where their projections for the year are going to land. And
Okay,
he provides a detailed, any changes to that detailed line item in the report gets sent back to me, and we adjust the forecast as needed.
that's good to know. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, and Frank, on that particular topic, has the board indicated that between their various federal and state dollars, that the expenses associated with school reopening can be accommodated within existing resources?
Yes,
Hi,
I have
Secretary.
not heard. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt. I didn't realize you were on.
Yeah, hi, Secretary. Yes, between the 2 funding sources that we received, we expect to be within those operating budgets for the reopening expenses.
Excellent. And just want to make sure that you're aware that in special session, we did pass MBR language to exclude any supplemental appropriations related to COVID-19 expenditures from the MBR calculation for 2 years. Okay, excellent.
Yes, we got. I got those emails yesterday, so I reviewed them and I understand.
Excellent. Okay. Other discussion on the financial report? Okay. We are going to move along to the last item for the City of West Haven, which is an update on municipal restructuring funds. First, let me begin with an update on the fiscal 20 restructuring funds. And you will recall that the budget for fiscal 20 and the 5-year plan assumed that $4.115 million could be provided to the City of West Haven, conditioned upon meeting several requirements. Again, that was an up to amount and not a specific, that if requirements are met, they will receive the full 4.115. It was an up to. The agreement gave the Secretary the option to delay or withhold payment of funds if the city was not in compliance with, and any of the conditions set forth in the memorandum agreement were not met. The city did meet compliance with their conditions, more specifically, the corrective action plan regarding the fiscal 2019 audit findings. There's still an ongoing process and has involved a significant amount of OPM technical assistance. So while most of the conditions were met, I would note that that is an area that will require additional follow-up and should in our fiscal 2021 MOA to continue to develop and implement the corrective measures. I do want to acknowledge the significant amount of support that was provided by Kim Kennison and Julian to help the city in this particular area. That is an area of expertise for Ms. Kennison, and she has provided a heavy amount of support to the city. I would also note that on the IT risk assessment scope, the city was required to provide the scope of the assessment performed after the ransomware attack was experienced in October of 2018. The documentation they provided was not sufficient to determine whether the risk was sufficiently comprehensive. However, the city has engaged their auditor to conduct an IT audit, which they've completed and they've forwarded to OPM. and the findings that are in this audit will be addressed in the 2021 MOA. So from a compliance perspective, the city met conditions. There are a couple of areas where that work will continue in fiscal year 2021. Now, with respect to the dollar amount, the up to 4.115 that was in our memorandum of agreement, the city, we did distribute early on in the fiscal year $100,000, which was remitted back to cover their MARB fee for administrative costs. And there was a remaining balance of up to $4,015,000. I want to update the committee that $3.015 million has been released to the city based on the following. When the MARB took action on the 5-year plan, the target fund balance for the fiscal year was $1.616 million. And due to some favorability that the town had in fiscal 20, the amount needed to get them to that target fund balance was exactly $3.015 million. And so that is the amount that has been provided. I will note for you that we have had prior discussions about supporting the city with their IBNR costs. The city did absorb some runoff in their budget for fiscal 20 and still had a surplus, and will continue to receive updates from the city on future IBNR expenses. So that is the update on fiscal 20. I want to open it up for any discussion in case there are any questions on that. Great, and in the spirit of transparency, I have received a communication from the city that inquiring about the remaining $1 million. And so again, when we entered into the memorandum of agreement, it was always documented and recorded as an up to amount. And so therefore, I feel it's in the best interest of the city that we honor the fund balance goals that we set. We ensure that we get them to that place. And obviously, as additional needs arise for the city of West Haven, that leaves some flexibility for us to help support them. Any questions before we move on to the fiscal 2021 restructuring funds? Okay. All right. Well, here we are in October. We have not yet executed our fiscal 2021 memorandum of agreement. You will recall that the adopted budget that we approved included $4 million in municipal restructuring funds as a general fund revenue source. I'd like to begin to execute the memorandum of agreement with conditions that would include items that the board has continued to discuss with the city of West Haven, including implementation of the Munis training and development plan as one of the references from the Bloom-Shapiro report, October 2018. Continuing to address the corrective actions on the fiscal 19 audit findings, a corrective action plan on the fiscal 20 audit findings, and with a monthly status report on implementation. If you are not speaking and could mute, that would be great. We have continued work on the HR action plan. Obviously, there will be an updated 5-year plan that will be required and the approval of the city's fiscal 22 budget. Continued efficiency measures, the Bloom-Shapiro IT audit, which we just mentioned, and the continued work with respect to the fire district initiatives. Those are some of the potential conditions that would be included in the MOA, and with that, I'd like to have the board weigh in if they see fit.
Melissa Bob White. I'd like to address the fire district proposal and the additional conditions at the bottom.
Yeah.
I think the fire district initiatives are good, but they don't go far enough. We've talked at previous meetings that the requirements of the fire district add significantly to the mill rate, putting the city going forward in a very difficult and perhaps uncompetitive position. Despite what's been happening on the city and the board side. So I would like to see, I don't know that there's any magic bullets, but I would like to see as part of the conditions that the city receive from the fire districts a sort of a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, whatever, to see what they can do to reduce the demands on the taxpayer. There's been some work being done on the pension and OPEB. I'm not sure that all stones have been turned. They may have, but I would like to see at least the start of a plan, because it's not just the organizational things that need to be fixed. That's progress, and I know the chiefs have been talking about it. But I think we really need a little more granular financial report. As to the other three, the remaining three, I think the two mid-year reports, I think were just I think a prudent thing to do. There's no approval or anything there, but given the uncertainty around the impact on the grand list and the budget assumptions given COVID, I think it would just be a good sort of check-in addition to the monthly report as to how they're doing. That may not be terribly extensive, but I think we ought to look at whether the assumptions the city made in the budget and the 5-year plan are coming true. The final issue is, the city's been talking about sale of certain property, and there's been some delay. Some sales have gone through, some I guess have been delayed a little bit for those reasons. But those are one-time revenues that are not included in the 5-year plan, or quite frankly the budget. And I really do think it's part of MARB oversight to have a say in how that's used. Anyway, that's my piece.
Thanks, Bob. Any other comments or discussion on the potential conditions?
This is Mark again.
Hey, Mark.
I have to echo what Bob is saying relative to the fire districts. I think the work that was done by OPM to look at the per capita costs of the fire districts and the legacy costs are something that can't be ignored. At some point in time, and I hope it may be a reality, because I asked this question from legal before, whether or not those independent fire districts can come under the MARB under a Tier 4. I'm just not sure that there's any, there has to be a come to Jesus meeting at some point in time, because it appears that this could be an anchor that, short of dissolution of those fire districts to start over again, which is the nuclear option, there has to be some recognition that they're operating in a way that really is detrimental to the city. So I don't know where we go from here, but I think a continuation of the same is going to be unacceptable and just a deterioration or detrimental effect to the city. So I agree with Bob as to somehow focusing in some way, some energy and effort to look at these fire districts. And I understand the back office mergers, and everybody's got their own turf to protect, and I get that. But at some point in time, there has to be a recognition that a continuation of the same without any reduction or savings to the towns, to the total side of the town, is going to be detrimental. So just a comment on that issue. echoing what Bob White said.
Thank you, Mark. Other discussion? Does the city care to comment? Mayor or any members of your team, do you care to comment on some of the conditions we're discussing?
Nancy Rossi. The only thing that I did want to comment, because I did read through them, was as I believe it was Bob White had said about, you know, like if we sell property or city property, which I agree is a one-time revenue. If you could give us more clarification, if you will, like maybe 4 or 5 things that we could do with this money, whether it's put against a liability, whether it's OPEB, a trust, whatever it might be. So we have some direction. So this way, you know, when we come to you, it's going to be something that we would hope would be mutually acceptable by the mark.
Thank you, Mayor. That's fair. Perhaps we can take that up in a subcommittee discussion.
That would be good. Yeah, give us some direction. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. Anything else with respect to conditions for the 21 restructuring funds? All right, excellent. Appreciate the board's feedback, and we will start executing that MOA. And that would conclude our agenda for the City of West Haven.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Frank. I just wanted to give the MARB an update. We did have a successful bond issue last Friday. The funds were received from the city. There was exceptional interest in those bonds, which resulted in a rather large premium that came in. That premium is being applied against the high school project, so that when the final costs come in, we won't need to bond as much for that project.
Excellent. Thanks, Frank. Frank, how much in premium, excess premium, did you receive?
I believe it's excess of 1.5 million.
Very good. And what was your true interest rate?
Off the top of my head, I want to say it was just under 2%.
Yeah, I think it was.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you for the update. Any questions on Frank's report out? Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Frank and team.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Great. Have a great day.
You too.
We can move on to the City of Hartford. I don't know that we have Mayor Bronin in attendance today, but I did hear that we have Yolanda Lazauskas. Who do we have from the city?
Mike Lupkis, Interim Director of Budget and Finance.
Excellent. Good to have you.
Management, Budget, and Grants. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so first up for the City of Hartford is a subcommittee update. The Hartford Subcommittee has not met since the last MARB meeting. The city has been focusing on restoring their system since the ransomware attack. So a future meeting will be scheduled accordingly. Therefore, unless there are any other discussions on subcommittee agenda, or if there's an update on the ransomware IT situation, we would start with our monthly financial report. Does the city have any particular updates on the matter with the ransomware attack?
Is Leanne on the line? I mean, I can give you a limited update onto, as far as I know, we have been able to get back onto our Municipal system in a limited capacity, trying to cut down on the number of users at any given time. So we are moving forward in that direction. As far as the retrieval of files, there has been some success with accessing our city shared drive, although there is right now it's still being reviewed as to how comprehensive of a restore we have. Some of the files that have been restored are not usable.
they are, IT, MHIS is still looking at doing the restore where it stands. So we're moving in a good direction, but we're still experiencing some difficulties in that. Many of the departments, especially finance and budget, are going through, I'll mention it again when we go through the report, we are looking at alternative methods of whether recreating reports or forecasting under different methods moving forward into the next month. Same thing on the finance side. They have recovered some of their files. They are up to their eyeballs now in the audit process, preparing everything for the audit. Auditors will be on site within the next couple of weeks. So that, that is also moving forward with a certain level of recreation of reports that are there.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's Leanne. I'm on mic. I was just
there's Leanne. Thank you.
But Secretary Mike gave a pretty good overview of the status of the ransomware attack. We actually got an update last night on our shared files where MHIS was able to recover a more recent backup that gave us access to a lot of the files that we were missing. And those files will help us move forward successfully with the audit this year.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Leanne. Is your timeline now stretched on audit deliverables as a result?
As of right now, we're going to say no. We have a couple of weeks to get ourselves caught up, and but we're leaving ourselves open to the possibility of filing for an extension.
Very good. All right. Any other questions from the board? Okay. All right. So, Mike, I guess I'm going to turn it over to you to give us a monthly financial report update.
Okay. Thank you. And good morning to everybody again. In your packet, you did receive the 2021 period 2 financial report, which does include up through actual data through the end of August. Off of our computer system, we did have to extend out our time period for the close, but we do feel we extended it out to get the large majority of activity posted by finance so that this report, year over year reflection is relatively as up to date as we could get it. Again, this is the second period, so we do show pretty much everything up to budget in the anticipation of the next report, which we will have a lot of detail and a lot of research going into at that time. So we would expect that to be the one with salaries, overtime, utilities, the normal projections coming out at that point in time. I would point out that as of right now, our tax collections, as was reported last month, are favorable. That continued through August, as you can see on page 3 of the report, and through September, they are also still favorable. We will be continuing to monitor them and again doing a review and forecast for the next monthly report. As far as the expense side, as of right now, there is nothing that raises a red flag in a negative direction, overall. Any of the expenses we would expect to be under budget. We are and have been reviewing the big items, overtime, for example, to make sure we're moving in the right direction, that it's not raising a flag. And as of right now, everything looks good. Police is going to be running over, it appears as of now, and we're investigating it and, taking appropriate action there moving forward. I'm just trying to see. I did have page 6. You do have a backup for the tax collectors collections. Showing through the first. I did mention that the first 2 months is year over year in excess, and that does extend out through September. I don't have any other notes that I wanted to point out to you at this time. I don't know if you have any questions or the board has any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Mike, with respect to the fiscal 2020 unaudited actuals, I see that the city is still reflecting it's showing about a $14.1 million surplus. Can you give an update on where we are with respect to the Board of Ed projected expenditures and prior discussion on the $3.6 million of potential use of fund balance?
Okay. As far as the Board of Ed, at the last meeting, the last MARB meeting, there was discussion about the carryover dollar amount, the $2.9 million carryover for the Board of Ed. And it was discussed about reversing it. During this month, in between, the city did reverse out the transaction that took place. It also reversed out the budget modification that was done to correspond to it. So right now, the Board of Ed is finalizing their numbers. It does appear that there will be a surplus in the Board of Ed line in the area of approximately 2.1 to 2.2 million. That will be rolling into the surplus that you see here. And what I would mention, and I apologize if I'm jumping around on you, is during the past month, it had been approved by the council to fund a set aside money for a civilian response unit to assist the police. So that is something that will be moving forward and is reflected. The final or the projected surplus right now is still being reviewed over the next month as to if there is appropriate uses for it in order to present the city on better financial footing, ranging from leaving it in fund balance, the set aside for the Board of Education, and any other transfers that may be appropriate for year end.
Great. So, Mike, the $14.1 million lapse, does that still have that $2.9 million journal entry recorded in benefits, or had you already processed it?
Okay. That has been processed, taken out of the actuals, and well, you don't have the 2020 budget here, but also reversed out of the budget that you saw last month.
Does that mean your surplus goes up by 2.9, or the 2.9 includes the?
No, that is included here.
Got it. Okay. And so did the Board of Ed, you indicated that they're going to have a lapse of 2.1, so they really did not incur the expenses that you were anticipating having to transfer funds for them in fiscal 20. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. And so then therefore that 2.9 million that was assigned fund balance will remain assigned fund balance. And did I hear you say that you were intending to give them an additional reserve of 2.2 million?
Well, no, I'm sorry. Maybe I misspoke on that. The 2.9 that exists right now has language in the ordinance that it applied to 2020. So based on comments from last time, that was all reversed out. So right now, what the expectation is, although nothing has been presented to council or moved forward, is if the set aside would be requested through council again this year to be done, that would basically start all over again and move up to a dollar amount between 0 and 2% max.
Great. Leanne, can you give any additional clarification on where we expect to land with fund balance for this year?
Sure. We're still in the final stages, Secretary, of getting to the final number for FY20 for the board. But it looks like, as Mike indicated, that we will be going to council shortly for an extension of the $2.9 million because the council resolution from FY19 specifically said for that money to be spent in FY20. So we want to make sure we get that extended for the board. And additionally, the board will be requesting to increase that reserve up to the max of 2% by set by statute. So after that reserve is created, there will be approximately, right now it's about $2 million. It could be lower as we get to the final stages of the audit, but that will be coming back to the city.
Okay, very good. And then finally, the city is still intending to do a set aside for the civilian response unit. And I believe the mayor had previously reported an economic uncertainty reserve as well.
Correct. I just want to clarify the civilian response unit will be transferred into a special revenue fund. So you won't see it in assigned or committed fund balance, but it will be transferred out into a special revenue fund.
Okay. Maybe next month when you're a little closer, we can just have an update from the city on the closing of June 30th, 2019 fund balance and the expected changes broken down by assigned and unassigned that you expect to see or make for June 30th, 2020. Great.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Sure.
All right. I have no other questions. Does anyone else have questions on the financial report?
This is Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Same question. I don't know if Hartford was on when I asked West Haven. How often do you have a policy or procedure to meet regularly with the board of your counterparts at the board side to go over their budget and where they stand on a monthly basis or maybe quarterly basis? Because obviously the budget is significant, and to avoid, as I previously said, surprises, is there a practice between the city side and the board side of the financial department's meeting to ask questions and to make sure that everybody understands what's going on between the budgets? I don't know if you have that in place, or if not, it should be in place.
Well, this is Mike. I've just taken over here in the last month or so. I have not met with the Board of Ed as far as their 2021 budget. We have had several conversations with the financial staff over there, with myself, Leanne, and other individuals of the city with the Board of Education concerning their 20 budget. Moving forward on 21, that is something that I would like to do. Whether it's a monthly or quarterly meeting, that is an intention that I will be doing that.
I appreciate that. I think that's important historically, knowing that there's somewhat of a firewall between Board of Education, their turf, and the city turf, and I get the politics around it. But at this point in time, I think it's necessary that there be a cooperative effort to make sure that everybody understands the budgeting, so the city doesn't have to respond to us in an area that they're totally unfamiliar with. So that would be a great help to the city and us down the road. Thank you.
Great, and I just want to echo Mark's comments, especially in light of the fluidity of school reopening and the needs of the the Board of Education side of the house, depending on whether kids are hybrid or fully remote, and that change throughout the year. So I think that would be good, as well as ensuring that you have an understanding of the significant resources that the state has sent to the board to help support those costs. So glad to hear that that will take place.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the Hartford's monthly financial report? Okay. You know, as we get into future work with Hartford, one of the areas I just want to give a heads up on that we need to begin to pay some attention to is your pay-as-you-go CIP plan, to get a sense of projects that are underway, your ability to fund them, some cleanup on the old projects in the ledger. Just want to see that we're continuing to make progress in those areas, given you know, you're not currently issuing bonds, and a significant amount of resources will come from your general fund for some period of time. So just want to flag that for the city, and we'll start an opportunity to talk about it in further detail. So with
Very
that,
good, thank you. I know that project. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, go ahead,
just
Mike.
so you know, I know that project has started internally and is moving along and has been continuing to move along so that we can address prior concerns that were raised previously.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. Any other comments for the City of Hartford from any of our MARB members as we think about our future work? All right. Okay, so thank you so much, Hartford. Looks like we're going to move on to the town of Sprague.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Excellent. Confirming that we have the town of Sprague on the call today?
We are here.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to begin with the subcommittee update. And I think I'm actually going to turn it over to Kim to give us an update and a forward look on what needs to come through the subcommittee. We will be heavily focused on the 5-year plan that needs to be revised and submitted to comply with MARB requirements. So Kim, can you hit the highlights for us, please?
Yes, definitely, Secretary. As far as Sprague is concerned, last month at the MARB meeting, the town had noted that they were going to provide the MARB for this meeting with the updated 5-year plan. We were not able to have a subcommittee for last month, and they were really focused on their bond funding that took place. So at this point, it is still pending for the subcommittee to meet, and our plan is to have a subcommittee meeting by the end of this month. And so we are waiting for the dates for the city to be prepared to provide us with an updated revised 5-year plan. We're open to working with them through this, but I do know also with the opening as a school that the Board of Ed has had some distractions. So I would then, Julian, unless you have anything else to add, I would ask for an update on the status of the 5-year plan, because that's the most burning issue at this time. Julian, do you have anything else to add?
Before Julian jumps in there, I just want to remind us that when our work began with Sprague, it was promulgated by a deficit in the Board of Ed, cash issues, and a negative fund balance. And when we put in place our initial support for Sprague to help them achieve some immediate stability, we did provide $500,000 in restructuring funds, recognizing at that time they had about a negative $1 million fund balance, or I think it might have been $800,000. And the plan was that the difference would have been covered by the sale of city property. The properties, and based on the way the transaction was structured, are really a lease, and therefore the lease proceeds are amortized over the life of the lease, over 99 years. So each year, only a very small amount is being recognized in their financials, which therefore does not lead us to more immediately remedying the negative fund balance, which was originally anticipated. So the 5-year plan is even more important now because we basically need to revise the plan in light of the fact that we didn't have a full sale that resulted in a large receipt of cash, therefore remedying the negative fund balance. So, Julian, if there's anything else you want to add, please feel free to jump in.
No, the only thing I would also point out is that the expectation is that the revised or updated plan that comes back to the subcommittee would have already gone through a process of vetting by the local boards, so the Board of Finance and the Board of Education, so that we know there's local support for the plan has already been established.
Great, thank you for noting that. So I think we will turn it over to the city to give us an update on their progress with the revised plan and the timeline on when it will be vetted and received by OPM for the MARB review.
Okay, thank you. We have been working with the Board of Ed. The item that we are currently working on is the enrollment and how that would impact the 5-year plan. We're looking for projected numbers so that we can have the most accurate plan that we can expect to receive, even though we are aware that it's always a moving number. We have added in the new bonding numbers, so we are pretty close. We just need to get in the Board of Ed numbers, and then we'll be able to bring it to the boards here and then bring it back to the MARB.
Great. First Selectman, are you, do we have a commitment that we should be receiving this plan in October? What is the specific timeline?
Yes, I would expect that we should be able to get it to you in October. We're expecting the numbers very shortly from the Board of Ed.
Okay, and it would be our goal to try to have a meeting at the end of October, but what I've asked that you continue to work with Kim and Julian so that we can firm that up and have a subcommittee scheduled and be ready to review it, vet it, and hopefully bring it back for full board consideration.
Okay, very good.
All right, any other comments or discussion on the 5-year plan status? Okay. Then we will turn to the monthly financial report for August, and I'll turn it over to the town to give an update.
Okay, first of all, on your report on the budget versus actual on page 6, there is an error that I wanted to bring to your attention that we noticed there on the Board of Selectmen expenditures. Percentage of budget for this year it says 25%, and then if you look at same period last year, it says 5%. That should be 26%. That was a glitch, and we are correcting that. But I wanted to bring it to your attention because it's a big discrepancy.
Thank you.
All in all, we are year over year roughly in the same place financially with the expenditures. Last month, we reported that we were a little bit behind on the tax collecting, and we did just get the report from the tax collector for the end of September, and we are at the 55% rate, which is where we were last year. So we're that is kind of what we anticipated, and we're pleased with that.
Great. Are there any questions on the First Selectman? Are you done with your report, or were you continuing?
Yes, that's fine. I mean, I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Great. So you're, from a revenue perspective, you're not concerned. You are trending well.
Yes, we're
to prior year. Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. And Sprague, you had used the deferral program.
That is
so
correct.
I guess we'll continue to. Oh, great. We'll monitor what happens in January. Mark, do you have a question on the Board of Ed?
No, I'm waiting to, I could wait until they get their next report. There are some areas, but because they haven't fully reported in, we can wait until subcommittee at that time.
Very good. And early indicators for the Board of Ed, are they indicating that with the state and federal dollars that have been sent through that they're able to meet classes to reopening? Or is that premature until we get an updated report?
This is Bill Hull, Superintendent. We, as of now, we're fine with all requirements that we have to do, including reopening. Unless hit by some huge extraordinary costs, I think we'll be fine with what we've gotten from the state and the federal government.
Great. And Superintendent, are you hybrid or all remote?
We are at this time hybrid, but as of October 13th, we're coming in full, except for Wednesdays, which are distance learning. We're using that to clean the building, and we're hoping by November, sometime in November, to be fully in. The problem here is surrounding towns have seen spikes. For example, Norwich, just south of us, has a positivity rate of 5%. We are still under 1% in town.
Very good. Thank you for the update.
No problem.
You stay there so our kids can get back in.
Melissa, this is Mark again.
Yes.
I didn't know the superintendent was on. Quick question, because you're a regional district, for the purposes of high school, obviously, if Norwich were to go full distance learning or whatever the case they were in now, is there any budgetary impact to that? Has the Board of Trustees in Norwich in any way, obviously, I don't know what the impact would be on Norwich relative to their budget, but if there were a savings for Norwich, would they somehow give you a tuition credit based on the yearly plan that they have? Or they just say the tuition is whatever it is, and whether we're hybrid, all distance, or fully in, you pay what you pay. Has there been any discussion about that with not only Norwich but any other district?
There's been no other, the tuition is the tuition. The only slight possibility is in transportation costs. But because we have private schools, we're transporting to private schools in our town. There's a parochial school that we're transferring. So the savings would be minimum at best if there is anything. But that would require us to renegotiate our contract again with the bus company, who our particular bus company has been problematic to negotiate with.
Yes, so I understand. Okay, thank you.
Not a problem. I will say that NFA and Lebanon held their tuition from 19 to 2020, so we figured that into our budget calculations already.
Okay.
So we were expecting a 3% increase from last year to this year. They held steady, but we were able to decrease the budget by that already.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I will give one further update. We're in the middle of negotiating our contract with our teachers. Although we went into mediation, we right now have a tentative agreement, and we are under state average by quite a lot for our increases for our teachers.
Thank you for that, Superintendent.
Will that come forth to the subcommittee?
That will, once it's approved, we haven't signed off on the tentative agreement. Once it's approved, yes, of course.
Any other questions for the Superintendent or the First Selectman today? All right,
Did we
very
hear-
good.
Did we hear an
sorry, go ahead.
update on cash? Excuse me, Secretary.
Yeah.
First Selectman, can you please update us on cash?
Cash flow is going fairly well. We're still a little bit behind on invoices for the Board of Ed. But again, roughly within the 1 month period. So we've caught up quite a lot and, continuing to move forward.
And we're not holding bills. We're processing within, reasonable timeframes, et cetera.
Yes, within the 30 days, roughly, we're getting everything paid, so we're comfortable with that.
If I may, this is Bill Hall, the superintendent. We have made, the town has made great progress in that. We're not running 2 or 3 months behind for Board of Ed budget, our bills. So, like Cheryl has reported, they're only 30 days out. So that's great progress for us in the town.
Great. Thank you. And in light of the negative fund balance, do you anticipate particular months where cash could be very thin or be below your minimum liquidity levels?
Possibly December.
Okay.
But that's our normal. Usually it's December when the taxes start to run out, and then usually around June. But those are the normal. But I don't anticipate anything out of the ordinary.
Very good. And can you send over your updated cash projection for the year to OPM?
Yes.
Great. Other questions for Sprague? Great. And do you have any contracts that exceed $100,000 that need to be submitted for MARB approval?
We have public, you mean like the labor contracts?
No, general fund contracts.
No.
Okay. Just want to remind of that requirement. Excellent. Okay. Any other questions for Sprague? Great. Does the board have any other business that they'd like to raise?
Hearing none, this is Sal Luciano. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Sal. Is there a second?
David Biller, I'll second.
Great. Over to you, Julian.
Mr. White,
Of course, yes.
Mr. Waxenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Biller, Mr. Luciano,
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton,
Yes.
Mr. Felsigno,
Yeah.
Mr. Brockman,
Yes.
Ms. Shaw,
Yes.
and Secretary McCaw.
Yes. Right. We're adjourned. Thank you all, and you have an extra 30 minutes in your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Nice
Stay
job,
safe, everybody.
Secretary. Very
Record
good.
time. Record time. It's never been done. We'll try again next month. All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Second time in a row.